Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we like to say here at Shady Acres Woodshop, howdy! Today we have a piece of American Sycamore. This comes to us from our friend Tuffy Marginez. The piece is about 7 1/4 by 10 1/4 by 4 3/4 inches tall. This will be the top, this will be the bottom. You can see some nice spalting in there. I don't know what else to expect from this. I think I have turned some sycamore before. I don't remember the variety. This is pretty light, so I don't think it's a super dense wood. It must be quite dry. I'm not sure what we're gonna do on the outside here. That bark just peels off, even with just air pressure, it just blows off of there, a lot of it. But it's just an interesting outside profile. I want to leave the top the way it is. I'm going to go drill a hole there where you can see I've marked it. I'm going to drill a hole for my woodworm screw. We'll get it mounted up on the lathe and get to turning. Now you can see here, I'm centered on the top by measurement. It barely leaves enough room for a tenon. There is enough room. That's just the way it is. 500 RPM. I'm going to be using my 5/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge, mask and face shield on. We're getting into this one side here, but the other side's untouched. The ends are forming up nicely. I need to flatten off the bottom. We'll mark out for our tenon. I'm going to go back to this corner and taper the piece in a little more. Yeah, okay, looking good. Looks like we're only going to have the one untouched side, but we'll have the top rim as well, and it won't be quite as thick as it is right now. Okay, that's about as thin as I want to go on this top edge. Oh, that's going to be so beautiful. All right, let's go back to the bottom and work on the tenon. Need to raise my tool rest up so I can use a thinner tool. Going to use this diamond point tool to square up the sides of the tenon. And that's good. So now we'll go back over here and finalize our cuts. I'd probably do better with a scraper. Yeah. Let me sharpen up my scraper and we'll scrape the outside. Time for sanding. I'm spending time peeling off the bark because I don't want it to come off when it's sitting on the table. When it's all said and done and finished and looking nice, and you go to pick the piece up and there's a bunch of bark sitting on the table. I'm trying to avoid that. Besides the skin under here, this is gorgeous. So as I work, I'm trying not to disturb that. I don't want to put any scratches in here, so it just takes a lot of time and patience, and I've been at this already for a half an hour or so. So I'll be doing this for a while before we start sanding. Now I'm going to start sanding. I'm going to sand all of the unturned parts, which is all of this and all along this top edge, with my Sandal Flex at 180 grit, and that's as fine as I will go on that. Then I'll switch to my 2-inch sander. I'm starting at 80 grit, and I'll work up through 400, and that'll get all of the turned parts. And I'll show you all that as soon as I get my mask on. So that's what it looks like. I'll be doing a lot of that. And it's not hard, it just takes time. And then with the lathe spinning in reverse at about 350 RPM, and I'll alternate with forward as well. So this will probably take me at least an hour, probably closer to 2. And I'll bring you back when it's time to put some finish on there. See you in a bit. The piece has a little punkiness on it right here, and a little bit right in here. But mostly it's pretty solid. I'm going to apply sanding sealer with a brush because there's so much nature in the piece. And then after I've got it all on with a brush, then I'll wipe with a rag as well to get rid of any possible brush strokes. The sanding went really well. It did take some time, but it wasn't an inordinate amount of time, a little over an hour, I guess. I was just talking to Cammie, one of our viewers, about punky-ness in wood, and I warned her that when sanding it, you can get a depression because the punky wood is softer, and that's what I have right here. It's a little bit of a depression. It's probably not even visible on camera. In fact, I can't really see it unless I get just the right light, but I can feel it. That's okay, that's just the way it is. I'm a firm believer that this sanding sealer and then shellac for a finish will take care of that. I don't believe it'll ever get any worse. So it'll probably take 2 coats of sanding sealer, and then I'll put on 2 coats of shellac, and I'll put that shellac on exactly the same way I'm putting on the sanding sealer. It won't look any different because it isn't any different. So I won't show that step, and I'll bring you back here in a little bit when it's time to turn it around and start working on the inside. I'm looking forward to that. See you in a bit. I've turned the piece around and mounted the tenon up in the chuck. This right here is the innermost part, so I want to stay inside of that. I don't want to run off the edge because this over here is the that natural part of the piece, along with all the way around the edge. So I want to stay inside of that. That'll make for a fairly small bowl considering how much space we have here end to end. I'm going to be using a 5/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge. We're going to be turning at 675 RPM. Mask and face shield on. I just want to see how close to that I am. Well, I'm not going to get far with that tailstock in my way. I just can't get a good angle without hitting the tool handle. In fact, I think I'm just wasting my time with it. I'm just going to get rid of it. Wow, yeah, it's just punky. Pretty grain though. I just want to see how far we have to go. No, about an inch. We must be about there. Yep. That's so punky that I'm afraid to use my scraper on it. It'll just tear it up. I've been shear scraping as I go down, and it's pretty good. It's as good as can be expected. Over here it's very nice, but the scraper will just tear that soft grain up. And that's no good, so time for sanding. I'm going to do the sanding with my 2-inch disc sander. I don't think we'll need the sander flex on any part of this. Came in handy on the outside, but that's done. So I'm going to start with 80 grit. The lathe is going to be spinning forward at 350 RPM. I'm going to work up through 400 grit. I'll alternate between forward and reverse, and I'll show you all that as soon as I get my mask on. And I'll just work up through the grits until I get to 400, and I'll bring you back when it's time to put some sanding sealer on there. See you in a bit. I just can't tell you how pleased I am with how the sanding came out on this. I can't find any of the punkiness that was there. I'm sure there must still be some in there, but I can't find it. So this is the first of at least 2 coats of sanding sealer. I did do 2 coats on the outside along with 2 coats of shellac for the finish. And I'll have to brush into these bark inclusions. Each one of them has a little bit of a depression to it. But this is some pretty grain, pretty wood, all that nice spalting. So that's what it's going to look like. I'll bring you back here in a little bit and we will turn it around and take off that tenon. See you in a bit. I've mounted a block of wood up on my chuck. Even though it has a non-slip surface on it, I'm going to put another piece on there because the edges of this, the whole thing doesn't fit down into the bottom, and the edges of this touch the wood surface inside the bowl, and I don't want it to mar it. So I'm just going to put a second piece over that and then bring up the bowl. And then bring up the tailstock. And I still have my center hole there for reference, so I can just put my live center in there. Bring up my tool rest. We'll spin the piece up. I'm going to hold my thumbnail against the edge of the tenon and see if it's hitting equally all the way around, and it sure is. I'm going to take a 3/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge, and at 500 RPM I'm going to commence to removing the tenon. I'm going to check for clearance, and we have good clearance. I'm going to look over my work here a little bit. Looks pretty good. We'll just continue on. And that's good. Now I'm going to use a 3/8 inch swept back bowl gouge. But first I'm going to adjust my tool rest so it's a little taller and a little closer. I want to be careful not to get under that little nub there, because that'll cause it to fly right out of there. I'm just going to keep working it away. Now that's quite small, so I'm going to turn the speed down to about 200 RPM. And I'm going to apply the bevel of the gouge against the bottom of the bowl. Pressure towards the headstock. Right hand on the gouge, left hand on the switch. And when the little nub stops turning or disintegrates like that, we'll know we're through. Now I can just take this over here to the workbench, sand it up, sign it, get it finished, and I'll be right back. Well, here it is, one American Sycamore natural edge bowl in the books. That beautiful grain, look at that. Oh my. That is so pretty. There's all my hard work removing all that little bits of bark that was on there. Look at that. It's marvelous. There's the bottom all finished up. Just such a pretty piece. Thank you, Tuffy Marginez, for sending this along for all to enjoy. If you like this video, thumbs up please, I'd sure appreciate it. If you'd share it around, that'd be terrific. If you're a subscriber, thank you very kindly. I truly appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. An easy way to subscribe is just click my picture you see there near the end of the video. Your comments are always welcome, and I read all of them. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop. signing off.